Okay, so you know when you're just scrolling through your phone, like probably procrastinating on something you should be doing, and then you see something that makes you literally drop whatever you're holding? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me when I saw Triple H's announcement. And I'm not even exaggerating here. Like, I've been watching wrestling for, 15 years now? And I thought I'd seen every possible surprise return, every shock debut, every holy crap moment WWE could possibly throw at us. I mean, we've had part-timers showing up unannounced, legends coming back for one last run, surprise draft picks, you name it. I probably stayed up way too late watching it on repeat. But this was different. And you know what the weirdest part was? Roman Reigns, the guy who literally conquered The Undertaker at WrestleMania, the man who's been carrying WWE on his shoulders for like 4 years straight, he looked like he'd just seen his high school ex walk into the room. I'm talking full-on deer in headlights mode. So here's the thing, and bear with me, because I'm still kind of processing this myself. Triple H didn't just announce another team member for Survivor Series. He basically dropped a nuclear bomb on everything we thought we knew about where this storyline was heading. And honestly, I should have seen it coming, but I was so focused on all the obvious choices that I completely missed what was right in front of us. You know how sometimes on social media everyone's making their fantasy booking predictions, and there's always that one guy in the comments who suggests something so wild that everyone just laughs it off? Well, that guy was right. And now Roman Reigns has to deal with the fact that his past just walked back into his life wearing cargo pants and a smile that says, "Yeah, I missed you too, but we've got some unfinished business to handle first." Okay, so let me back up a bit because context is everything here, and you need to understand just how insane things have been getting lately. Like, I've been following this Paul Heyman storyline for weeks now, and every time I think I know where it's going, they throw another curveball that leaves me completely confused. So Paul Heyman, and can we just acknowledge for a second how this man hasn't aged a day since like 2005? He's been putting together what I can only describe as a supervillain team. I mean, seriously, it's like he looked at every nightmare scenario for Roman Reigns and said, you know what? Let's make all of these happen at once. First, there's Brock Lesnar. And look, I know we're all kind of tired of the whole part-timer shows up and dominates thing. But come on, it's Brock freaking Lesnar. The man is basically a real-life boss fight. I remember watching him suplex John Cena like 16 times at SummerSlam. And I'm pretty sure that was just Brock having a casual Tuesday. When this guy shows up, people get hurt. Like, legitimately hurt. Then Heyman adds Bronson Reed to the mix, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so now we have a guy who can launch himself off the top rope despite weighing like 350 pounds. Have you seen this man's tsunami splash? It's not even fair. I watched him nearly put someone through the Earth's core with that move, and he did it with this casual expression like he was just getting warmed up. But wait, there's more. Because apparently Heyman decided that wasn't enough chaos for one faction. Enter Logan Paul, and I know what you're thinking. Logan Paul, the YouTube guy? But here's the thing that's been driving me crazy. This dude has no business being as good at wrestling as he is. Like, it genuinely annoys me how naturally talented he is at this. I remember when he first showed up, I was all ready to hate watch his matches, you know? I had my Twitter fingers ready to roast him the second he messed up. But then the guy goes and has legitimately good matches with people like Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and I'm sitting here like, well, this is awkward. I actually have to respect Logan Paul now. And that's the scary part about him being in this faction. He doesn't care about wrestling politics or respecting the hierarchy. He'll walk up to The Undertaker and probably ask him for a selfie. That kind of fearlessness makes him dangerous in a way that traditional wrestlers aren't. So you've got this collection of absolute units working together, and they're all being orchestrated by Paul Heyman, the guy who basically wrote the book on psychological warfare in wrestling. This man has been studying Roman Reigns since before Roman even knew he wanted to be in wrestling. He knows every weakness, every insecurity, every button to push. I was watching one of their recent segments, and Heyman was doing that thing he does where he talks really quietly, but somehow sounds more threatening than if he was screaming. You know what I mean? That whisper yell thing that makes you lean forward in your chair because you don't want to miss a word, but also makes you kind of nervous about what he's going to say next. And through all of this, you could see Roman starting to realize he might be in trouble, not scared. Roman doesn't really do scared. But like when you're playing a video game and you suddenly notice the boss music has changed and gotten way more intense. That, oh crap, this just got serious feeling. Seth Rollins joining up was huge, don't get me wrong. I mean, the history between those two alone could fill like 3 documentaries. But even with Seth's Monday Night Rollins energy and Roman's Tribal Chief dominance, something felt incomplete. Like they were missing that third piece that would make them a complete unit, rather than just two really good wrestlers working together. So fast forward to this week's episode, and I'm watching with my usual setup. Pizza that's probably way too greasy, Twitter open on my phone for live reactions, and that nervous energy you get when you can feel something big is about to happen. Triple H comes out, and immediately I know this isn't just another regular promo. You know how you can tell when someone has news versus when they're just killing time? Triple H had that look like he was about to drop something that would break the internet. And honestly, I should have been more prepared for what came next. He starts talking about chaos and finding the right person to handle it, and I'm sitting there running through every possible name in my head. Drew McIntyre? Nah, he's doing his own thing. CM Punk? Please, but probably not happening. Goldberg? God, I hope not. I can't handle another part-timer controversy right now. But then Triple H gets to the part about needing someone who doesn't just fight fire with fire, but someone who burns everything down. And something clicked in my brain. Like, those specific words? They sounded familiar, you know? But I couldn't quite place why. And then he said it. Dean Ambrose. I literally threw my pizza, like, not on purpose. I just involuntarily launched it across the room because my brain basically short-circuited. My first thought was, did I hear that right? My second thought was checking Twitter to make sure I wasn't having some kind of wrestling fan fever dream. But nope, there it was. Dean Ambrose, the lunatic fringe himself. The guy we thought was done with WWE forever, the guy who left on what seemed like pretty bad terms, the guy who I'd given up hope of ever seeing back in a WWE ring. The music hit, and I swear to God, I got goosebumps like I was 12 years old watching wrestling for the first time. That opening guitar riff that used to signal that someone was about to have a very bad night. Hearing it again after all these years was like finding out your favorite canceled TV show was getting brought back. And when he walked out, man, this wasn't some sanitized, corporate-approved return. This was vintage Dean Ambrose. The wild hair, the cargo pants, that slightly unhinged look in his eyes that always made you wonder if he was going to stick to the script or just start hitting people with whatever was handy. The way he walked to the ring, I'd forgotten how good he was at that. Not rushing, not showboating, just this measured, predatory stride that somehow conveyed more intensity than most wrestlers manage with a 5-minute entrance routine. Okay, so let me explain why this isn't just a cool surprise return. This is Paul Heyman's absolute worst nightmare wrapped up in cargo pants and delivered with a deranged smile. See, Heyman's whole strategy was built on predictability. He knows Roman inside and out because he worked with him for years. He understands Seth's patterns because he's studied tape on him forever. These guys have tendencies, favorite moves, comfort zones that you can game plan around if you're smart enough, and Heyman is definitely smart enough. But Dean Ambrose, that's like trying to prepare for a natural disaster. You can't game plan for someone who doesn't have a game plan themselves. I remember watching his original run, and the thing that always stood out to me was how he'd do stuff that made absolutely no sense from a strategic standpoint, but somehow worked perfectly in the moment. Like he'd grab a random object from under the ring, not because it was part of some master plan, but because it seemed like a good idea right then and there. There was this one match where he pulled out a potted plant. A potted plant! Who thinks to grab a potted plant as a weapon? But somehow he made it work, and the crowd went absolutely wild for it. That's the kind of unpredictability that drives traditional wrestlers crazy, because there's no way to prepare for it. And that's exactly what Roman's team needed. Don't get me wrong, I love Roman and Seth, but they're both very methodical. They have their movesets, their strategies, their approaches to different situations. Which is great most of the time, but when you're facing a group like Paul Heyman's faction, maybe what you need is someone who operates on pure instinct. Plus, and this is something I don't think people are talking about enough, Ambrose has history with Brock Lesnar. Like personal history. Remember their feud? Most people who get in the ring with Brock either get immediately destroyed or spend the whole match looking terrified. But Ambrose, he just kept coming back for more. I watched him take some absolutely brutal punishment from Lesnar and then come back the next week asking for seconds. That level of stubbornness, or maybe insanity, is exactly what you need when facing the Beast incarnate. But here's the thing that's really going to mess with Paul Heyman's plans: the chemistry factor. And I know chemistry gets thrown around a lot in wrestling discussions, but with the Shield, it was something you could actually see. Like, I went back and watched some of their old matches after the announcement, and it's crazy how well they work together. They moved like they shared a brain sometimes. Roman would know exactly when Seth was going to need a tag. Seth would instinctively get out of the way when Dean was about to do something completely unhinged. Dean would somehow always be in the right position to break up pin attempts or interfere with outside interference. It's like watching a jazz trio that's been playing together for 20 years. They can improvise together seamlessly because they understand each other's rhythms and tendencies so well. Compare that to Heyman's faction, which, don't get me wrong, is full of incredibly talented individuals. But they're just that, individuals working toward a common goal. They haven't put in the thousands of hours together that the Shield has. They don't have that almost telepathic communication that comes from being in the trenches together for years. I mean, Brock Lesnar is basically a one-man army anyway. He doesn't really do teamwork in the traditional sense. He just shows up, suplexes everyone in sight, and calls it a day. Logan Paul is still learning the nuances of tag team wrestling. Bronson Reed is a powerhouse, but he's used to being the focal point of his team's offense. The Shield, on the other hand, was built from the ground up as a unit. They came up together through developmental, they learned together, they made mistakes together, they figured out what worked and what didn't together. And that's something you can't manufacture no matter how talented your individual members are. You can't teach someone to anticipate their partner's moves the way these three do. You can't create the trust that comes from knowing that no matter what crazy situation you find yourself in, the other two are going to have your back. You know what hit me the most about watching this announcement? The emotional weight of it all. Like, I've been following these guys' careers since the Shield debuted, and seeing them back together, even just for one night, brought back so many memories. I remember where I was when they first came through the crowd at Survivor Series 2012. I was in college, probably supposed to be studying for finals, but instead I was glued to my laptop watching three relatively unknown guys completely change the landscape of WWE in one night. There was something special about them from the very beginning. They had this aura of danger, like they could show up anywhere, anytime, and completely derail whatever was happening. They made every show feel unpredictable because you never knew when you'd hear that music hit and see three guys in tactical gear coming through the crowd. But it wasn't just the surprise factor, it was how genuine their brotherhood seemed. You could tell these weren't just three guys who happened to be put in a group together. They legitimately cared about each other, and that came through in everything they did, which made it hurt so much more when it all fell apart. I still remember that night when Seth turned on them. The chair shot heard round the world. I was genuinely upset about it, not just disappointed as a fan, but actually emotionally invested in what felt like watching a family break apart. The years that followed showed just how much that bond meant to all of them. Even when they were feuding with each other, even when they were on opposite sides of major storylines, there was always this undercurrent of history between them. Their matches against each other felt different, because you could sense the weight of everything they'd been through together. So, seeing them back together now, even temporarily, feels like getting closure on something that's been bothering me for years. Like finding out that family members who had a falling out finally made peace with each other. Let's talk about what this must be like for Roman specifically, because I think there's a lot going on under the surface that people might not be picking up on. Roman has worked incredibly hard to establish himself as the guy in WWE. The tribal chief persona, the head of the table thing, these aren't just character developments, they're statements about where he sees himself in the hierarchy. He's not just a top guy anymore, he's the top guy. But the Shield represents a time when Roman was part of something bigger than himself. When he wasn't the clear leader, just one of three equal parts of something special. And while he's achieved way more individual success since then, there's something to be said for the pure joy and brotherhood that defined those early years. I've always wondered if Roman sometimes misses that simplicity. Being the face of the company comes with so much pressure. You're representing WWE at corporate events. You're the guy they build entire pay-per-views around. You're the one who gets blamed when ratings dip or praised when they go up. But in the Shield, he could just focus on being the muscle, the powerhouse, the guy who tagged in when it was time to clean house. There was something pure about that role that he probably doesn't get to experience much anymore. Now Dean's back, and Roman has to figure out how to balance being the tribal chief with being a Shield member again. Those are two very different roles with very different expectations. The tribal chief is calculated, measured, always in control. The Shield Roman was more instinctive, more willing to take risks, more focused on the team than on individual glory. I'm really curious to see which version shows up at Survivor Series. Will we get measured, strategic Roman who thinks 3 moves ahead? Or will we get that guy who used to spear people through barricades just because it felt right in the moment? Can we just take a moment to appreciate how absolutely bonkers social media went when this announcement happened? Like, I've seen wrestling fans get excited before, but this was something else entirely. Twitter legitimately slowed down for a few minutes. I was trying to refresh my timeline to see reactions, and everything was moving like molasses. The hashtag Shield reunion was trending worldwide within like 10 minutes, which is insane when you consider that this was just one announcement on one wrestling show. But it wasn't just the quantity of reactions, it was the quality. These weren't just casual fans making noise. These were people who had been hoping for this moment for literally years, and you could feel the genuine emotion in their responses. I saw grown adults posting videos of themselves crying, not exaggerating, actual tears because Dean Ambrose was back. Wrestling fans can be pretty cynical sometimes, myself included. But this cut through all of that cynicism and hit people right in the feels. The memes started almost immediately too. Someone had already made a gif of Roman's shocked expression, set to the record scratch freeze frame thing. There were side-by-side comparisons of the Shield then versus now. People were posting their fantasy booking scenarios for how the reunion would play out. But my favorite reactions were from the wrestlers themselves. You could tell that even people who worked in the business were genuinely surprised by this. Guys who usually maintain kayfabe on social media were posting reactions that seemed totally authentic. I think that's what made this feel so special. It wasn't just fans marking out, though we definitely were. It felt like one of those rare moments where everyone involved, from the casual viewers to the hardcore fans to the wrestlers themselves, was united in genuine excitement about what was happening. So here we are, less than a week away from Survivor Series, and I honestly have no idea what to expect. Like, none. Usually by this point in a storyline buildup, you can kind of predict how things are going to go. But this changes everything. The obvious question is whether this is just a one-night thing or if we're looking at a longer-term reunion. And honestly, I'm kind of torn about which I'd prefer. On one hand, the romantic in me wants to see the Shield have one final run together. Maybe not as long as their original run, but enough to give us some proper closure and some dream matches we never got the first time around. On the other hand, there's something to be said for keeping this special. One perfect night where 3 brothers put aside everything else and stood together against a common enemy. Sometimes the most powerful moments are the ones that don't get stretched out or over-explained. From a storytelling perspective, Triple H has put himself in an interesting position. If the Shield wins at Survivor Series, how do you explain them going back to their separate ways afterward? If they lose, does that diminish the impact of the reunion? I guess what I'm saying is that this announcement has raised the stakes so high that I'm genuinely nervous about how it's all going to play out. We're dealing with legacy stuff here. Not just individual legacies, but the legacy of one of the most beloved factions in recent wrestling history. And that's a lot of pressure to put on one match. But if anyone can handle that pressure, it's these 3 guys who've been carrying WWE on their backs for the better part of a decade. Let's paint the picture of what we're walking into at Survivor Series, because this isn't just going to be a wrestling match. This is going to be an event. In one corner, you have Paul Heyman's Vision faction. These guys are hungry, ruthless, and have absolutely nothing to lose. Brock Lesnar probably sees this as a chance to remind everyone why he's called the Beast. Logan Paul gets to prove that he belongs in the ring with legends. Bronson Reed can showcase his power on the biggest stage. They're dangerous because they're unpredictable and desperate. In the other corner, you have the Shield. 3 men with a bond that goes deeper than any contract or business relationship. They've been through wars together, they've hurt each other, they've forgiven each other, and now they're back together for what very well might be the last time. The contrast is perfect from a storytelling standpoint. Calculated destruction versus chaotic brotherhood. A group of killers working together versus a true family fighting as one. The uncertain future versus the legendary past. And right in the middle of it all is Dean Ambrose, the wild card that nobody saw coming. He's the guy most likely to do something completely off script. The guy who might decide to target everyone in the match just because chaos is fun. The guy who could either lead the Shield to victory or burn everything down just to watch it burn. You know what's crazy? I've been following wrestling for like 15 years, and I can't remember the last time I was this genuinely uncertain about how a match was going to end. Usually you can kind of feel which way the story is leaning, but this feels completely up in the air. Does WWE want to give the Shield a storybook ending? Do they want to establish Heyman's faction as the new dominant force? Is this all set up for an even bigger swerve that nobody's expecting? I have no idea, and that's what makes it so exciting. And that's what this whole thing has reminded me of. Why I fell in love with wrestling in the first place. It wasn't the athleticism, though. That's impressive. It wasn't the spectacle. Though WWE certainly knows how to put on a show. It was moments like this. Moments where real emotion meets athletic competition. Where storylines that have been building for years suddenly converge in unexpected ways. This is wrestling at its absolute best. When the past and present collide, when genuine relationships enhance the fictional storylines, when surprise returns feel earned rather than forced. I mean, think about it. How many times have we seen wrestlers come back and it felt kind of hollow? Like the company was just trying to recapture old magic without really understanding what made it magical in the first place? But this feels different. This feels like it's coming from a genuine place of wanting to tell a complete story. Triple H has been pretty open about wanting to give wrestlers proper send-offs and closure for their characters, and this feels like exactly that kind of moment. Whether the Shield wins or loses at Survivor Series, whether this is a one-night reunion or the beginning of something longer, we're about to witness something special. Something that wrestling fans are going to be talking about for years. Dean Ambrose is back. The Hounds of Justice are reunited. Roman Reigns has his brothers by his side once again. And Paul Heyman's carefully constructed plans just got hit by a freight train wearing cargo pants. I don't know about you, but I'm going to be glued to my TV this Sunday, probably stress-eating pizza and refreshing Twitter every 5 seconds. Because moments like this, genuine, emotional, unpredictable moments, are why wrestling fans stay wrestling fans even when the product frustrates us. Either way, we're about to find out. The Lunatic Fringe is back, the Shield is complete, and Survivor Series just became must-see television. Let's see how wild things get when the Hounds of Justice start hunting again.